This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. An Air India plane heading to London carrying 242 people has crashed shortly after takeoff in India. All but one of those on board are believed to have died. The lone survivor is a British man, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, whose family come from Leicester. He said he had no idea how he escaped. The Indian Civil Aviation Minister has confirmed that a formal investigation has been launched by the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau to try to find the cause of the crash. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive, and it's time to see what's making the headlines with columnist and leader writer at The Times, Sebastian Payne, and the associate political editor of The New Statesman, Rachel Cunliffe. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let us see what's on some of the front pages. One story dominating the Air India disaster dominates all the front pages, along with pictures of sole survivor Vishwas Kumar Ramesh from Leicester. The Sun calls Mr Ramesh the miracle Brit in seat 11A. That word miracle also features on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Likewise, the front of the Daily Star. An almost identical headline in the Mirror. Another variation on that same headline is lead in the Daily Express. This is the Metro with a sequence of pictures as the disaster unfolds, and the headline, Brit is only survivor of Flight 171. The Times does something similar with the pictures, headlining with Crash leaves sole survivor. The Eye has British man walks away from crash that kills hundreds. I don't know how I'm alive. The Mail quotes what Mr Ramesh told his brother in Leicester when he called from India with news of the crash. The Financial Times spells out the death toll with a picture of the aircraft's tail section perched precariously on top of the Medical College building it hit. While The Guardian says that the total number of deaths could reach 260 at least. So with me still, Sebastian Payne and Rachel Cunliffe. As I said, we are only really going to be speaking about this one story, which is dominating all of the front pages. We'll take a look at the Sun first of all, and the miracle Brit in seat 11A. And when you look at the pictures of him walking away from that fireball, you can only describe it as a miracle.
It's astonishing, isn't it? And all of the papers are going for variations on the front pages of either that photo of him in hospital, just with a few scratches, it seems, and photos of the plane itself. And you can see both of those on the Sun, the plane, the front of it, and the wing sticking out of the wreckage of the building, the medical hostel that it crashed into. And so you really get the juxtaposition of both the horror of the crash and also the miracle that this man was somehow able to survive, clutching his boarding pass in seat 11A, which I imagine is going to be a very popular seat for people flying in the near future to choose. And his story is that 30 seconds into takeoff, there was a loud noise, he realised something was wrong, and it happened very quickly, and then he just got up next to an emergency exit and was able to walk away before the plane burst into flames. Mm.
But how he's the only person that, I don't know whether it's he had the presence of mind or he was in a position where, you know, he could get to the emergency exit. It's just unfathomable.
Yes, there's been some speculation that because he was in the exit row, they tend to have a stronger fuselage around them. So that may have been that when the plane crashed, there was some level of protection. But again, the reason I think it's fair to be described as a miracle by nearly all the front pages is the fireball that engulfed the plane. And one of the reasons that's associated on the front page is that there are no other survivors, is that essentially the intense heat from the plane's fuel tank just meant that everyone else would have very sadly died instantly when the plane crashed. So again, I mean, it's unfathomable. But we should also remember just the huge loss of all this as well. You know, 241 people, of which everyone except the sole survivor on the plane, plus many on the ground. That, you know, it took off from the airport, crashed in a residential area, and the picture on the front page of the Sun, which shows the tail, it crashed straight into that building. And I think the police and medical force on the ground have said it's going to be quite some time before they manage to track down everyone's going to happen. There's been a huge number of people taken to hospital as well. But the whole thing is a totally horrific tragedy.
No, absolutely. The Express reporting that further 53 people died on the ground, as we see from the pictures, that tail going into that hostel for medical students. So, I mean, we still really don't know the full impact of this disaster, do we?
No, one thing that we do know, talking about the miracle survivor, is that his brother was also on board elsewhere on the plane. So he will have, according to all the reports, that was his first thought for his brother and his family in London, getting that. You imagine what that video call must have been like. You've got families across the world, but in particular in the UK, given that that's where the plane was headed, desperately hoping for information, for any kind of guidance at this moment. You've got vigils and prayer meetings going on, and obviously, given the number of passengers on board and that it was a very international airport, you have got this tragedy reverberating all over the world tonight.
And Sebastian, we've heard from Sir Keir Starmer, haven't we? And also David Lammy's chaired a Cobra meeting.
Yes, and that reflects the number of British casualties that are expected from the plane loss. That it is the most British lives lost in a plane crash in 40 years, when 55 people died in a plane in 1985 at Manchester Airport. So this really is a huge loss of life, and there's a lot to be done in terms of obviously repatriating those who died, but also, you know, families who obviously are going to be aware of the crash, and those who may have been in the plane, may have not been on the plane as well. But Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, offered his words of condolences, as did the King and the Queen as well this evening, who said they were thinking of the families and praised the emergency services for the work they've done on the ground in very, very difficult conditions, because the plane broke up into many different pieces. You've had airplane fuel everywhere, still burning, and amidst all that is trying to clear it up, but also deal with victims on the ground as well as those on the plane. But yes, I think it will be quite some time before we know the details of this. There's a lot of speculation as to what went wrong. And I think your correspondent earlier mentioned there's been speculation on the engines failing or the flaps not working properly as the plane took off. But the thing is so rapid. I think that's what's so shocking about it, that it had been in the air for about sort of 30, 60 seconds before it went down. And there's that footage which has been shared widely on social media, and a lot of the front pages have captured, that shows the plane coming down. And what's so remarkable about it is the plane looks like it's coming into land. It's not a plane that's totally spiralling out of control. It's one that looks like it's coming in. So there'll be a lot of questions, and as of course, as always the case with these things, they'll be looking for the black box, which they will probably find the wreckage when they start to clear it, and that will add some indication of what happened and what went wrong.
And Rachel, we know that UK air accident investigators are on their way to India to help with the investigations that obviously have been launched straight away.
One imagines that's one of the things that will be discussed at the Cobra meetings, the international community coming together to help figure out what happened here. And I think Seb is right to flag the comments from the Prime Minister. I just also want to flag Donald Trump's response to this, which is nobody had any idea what happened, which is true. And then it looks like it was flying just fine. And the reason I flag that is simply because, as Seb said, there is video footage of it taking off not in the way that planes ought to, with evidence, if you are an aviation expert, which Trump clearly is not, that something was clearly amiss very early on for it to run into difficulty that soon. There was a Mayday call within the first minute, and the whole thing happened within 30 to 60 seconds. So another intervention from the US president, acting as though he perhaps knows more on this area than he does. And I think now is a time to leave it to the real experts until we can get a clearer idea about what happened.
The one thing the US administration has done, though, which is good, is to send over their aviation experts, so I think are the biggest and most experienced team in the world, along with the British investigators are involved as well. So again, you can see the international community is very much coming together at this difficult moment. But as I said, there's a lot of kind of aviation sort of geeks and people looking as here and what happened. But I think, as we heard from the US Transport Secretary just before, the thing to do is to focus on the families and the victims of this awful incident, track down the black box, and then we'll get the experts' real view on what happened here, because it's just such a shocking thing, particularly when it comes to a plane. There are over 1,100 of these Dreamliners. I've flown on several of them, and they're very new, very comfortable planes with, so far, a good track record. And, you know, this does pose questions for Boeing in its future as well.
Yes, which is something the Financial Times has on their front page. Boeing revival doubts their recovery had been on track. That's according to the chief executive, Kelly Ortberg. He told the Financial Times. But seemingly, share price was down following this accident, wasn't it, today?
Well, there have been questions about Boeing for a number of years, not this particular type of plane, but the Boeing 737,
yes.
Which had two fatal crashes, one in 2018 and one in 2019, and then other issues in subsequent years. But it was thought that the company had been turned around, the head of the company was replaced, and this is going to raise serious questions about the airline's future, because crashes are extremely, extremely rare. Air accidents like this are, I mean, we're talking about it, we're spending an entire news programme talking about it because it's very rare, but it is also incredibly emotive and something that people, I think, rightly feel very strongly about. So when there is any kind of doubt, any loss of confidence in an airline, it has real consequences for that airline's future.
Yeah, Boeing's had a lot of issues on, as you said, Rachel, the 737, and the safety around the doors. I mean, there were multiple incidents of doors coming off the planes, and Boeing had to pay some huge compensation levels and do recalls of its planes as well. It's had a bit of a management clear out. They were hoping that that was going to sort of draw a clean break and they would turn it around. And as I said, the Dreamliner is a very popular plane, but obviously it is going to be very difficult for the company in the coming days, and they've also said they'll be collaborating with the investigators to find out what exactly has gone wrong.
The Guardian turning to the individuals and the people involved with all of this, and make mention a detail of a girl aged 4 and her parents are amongst the 53 Britons that are killed, which just reminds you that real people are involved, and it's not about these multinational companies. It's not just about Boeing, but it's about these individuals that we see on the front page. Again, we have Vishwas Kumar Ramesh as the sole surviving passengers pictured on the front page. Rachel?
Well, I think the Guardian headline is probably more similar to the headlines that you'll see in non-British papers tomorrow, focusing on the 260 so far that we know of victims, rather than the miraculous sole survivor. And some of the victims listed, as you said, a 4-year-old girl. There's another report of a 1-year-old girl. Lots of children, lots of families on this flight, lots of British Indian nationals visiting family in India, and Indian nationals visiting family in Britain. And I think absolutely right for them to focus on the victims. Very, very dramatic photo. Again, actually, I would say of all the papers, possibly the most dramatic one of the crash itself, with the others focusing primarily on the sole survivor.
Yeah. And also something that affects a lot of people, obviously, in this country. I was speaking to a friend who knows of friends who've lost their parents tonight. So it just really brings it home. Absolutely devastating. Thank you for the moment. Very difficult subject. But we'll be looking at some other stories in the papers. The Telegraph reports on accusations that Rachel Reeves has made up numbers in her spending review. Stay with us for more.
Pushing forward, trying to get people to disperse.
What Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me.
Is that your opinion?
It is. It is.
They were serious, coordinated attacks.
It's an entire generation that will have to contend with the horrifying impacts of this conflict.
The number of patients is increasing.
It's been quite some day.
Hey, what country are you
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
You've gone viral.
I've ever had such a reaction.
It's just incredible.
Since the Oval Office meeting, have they reached out to you?
If Ukraine asks for help and its allies decide to help, then that's the end of it.
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
A historic day here today.
Beth Rigby from Sky.
You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
There could be some more painful decisions to come.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview with me once again, columnist and leader writer at The Times, Sebastian Payne, and the associate political editor of The New Statesman, Rachel Cunliffe. Now, in the first section, we obviously concentrated on the air crash in India, which has dominated all of the front pages, but we're going to take a little look at domestic politics, a couple of stories, and Rachel Reeves' front page of The Telegraph. She's being accused of making up numbers. This is in her spending review. Sebastian.
So yes, we had the big fiscal event, potentially, of this Parliament this week, where Rachel Reeves went round and said who's going to spend what for the next 3 years. It's been a very long process, taking a year to do, much longer than spending reviews normally do. And it's obviously been winners and losers, with defence and health coming very well off the back of it, other departments less so. But what's overhung all this is the sense that there needs to be big savings made. And within that spending review was £14 billion of efficiency savings every year, not just a one-off thing. It meant a lot of money. And the Telegraph reports tomorrow that Paul Johnson, who's the very respected, eminent director of the IFS think tank, has said he can't find any particular area of spending which the government decided it wants to withdraw from, except overseas aid, which is going to fund the defence budget. And he hesitated to accuse the Treasury for making up numbers, but ... Please turn to page 19 to read the rest of that quote there, which makes it a bit difficult. But I think the key point of what Mr Johnson is trying to say here is that the spending review is asking a lot of departments. It's giving some of them more money, but also to say you've got to cut your head count and do more with less. And I think, particularly when it comes to education, that's going to be really, really tough for the government. I was going to pick one area that might come unstuck. I think it could be that, because their settlement is tight, as is the Home Office. But yes, a lot of scrutiny of that spending review, and then we'll watch and see how it works out in reality.
Rachel, to be accused of making up the numbers by the Institute of Fiscal Studies, that's quite some criticism, isn't it?
It's not great, let's put it that way. And the IFS is politically neutral, and as Seb said, Paul Johnson is very well respected, and they were combing through the numbers in the spending review yesterday and basically saying that it's very confusing because Rachel Reeves is using lots of different numbers. Some of it was capital spending, some of it was day-to-day spending, some of it was on a 3-year timeline, some of it was for the end of the Parliament. It was all very confusing and difficult to actually get a sense of what was going to be spent when. The defence of Rachel Reeves that I would give is that when Jeremy Hunt, the previous Chancellor, cut national insurance, he penciled in really deep cuts to unprotected departments, cutting unprotected departments like Justice, like the Home Office, by up to a fifth, and he just said efficiency savings, we'll figure out the money somehow. Now, obviously, that was something that Rachel Reeves, as the Shadow Chancellor, criticised Jeremy Hunt for at the time. Now she's doing something similar, but I do think this is just kind of what Chancellors do.
Yeah, it's very different when you're in opposition, isn't it? What you think is a good idea and what isn't. Finally, let's have a look at the Financial Times. Sebastian, tell us why Poundland has fallen short of its name.
Yes, so Poundland has been sold, but ironically not for £1, for €1, which translates to 85 pence at the current exchange rate. So this is the discount retailer that I think was very big in the 90s and early noughties, but has had rougher times of late. Obviously, retail generally is a pretty competitive environment, but you've also got the rise of many other bargain shops like B&M, Home Bargains, Aldi and Lidl. And it was bought by Pepco, which is a Warsaw-listed company that owns lots of discount retailers across Europe. And they have sold it to Gordon Brothers, which is basically a company that buys distressed firms and seeks to turn them around. So the fact it's been sold for €1 or 85p suggests it's not in the rudest of health. But there is a turnaround plan. There is going to be secured loans of £30 million and overdraft of another £30 million, which means they can see it as a viable ongoing concern. So if you do enjoy Poundland on your high street, it's not going anywhere. But the thing that I was shocked is that they've really had to move away from their £1 price point, which does kind of raise the question of what is the point of calling it Poundland?
Well, maybe there'll be a name change.
Or maybe they should be 85p land. That's not as catchy, though. And €1 land. Euroland doesn't sound...
Post-Brexit, you can't do that
No, you can't do that. But the
Euroland sounds like a theme park.
There was another one called Pound Stretcher as well.
And there was the 99p store that was undercutting Poundland by a penny. But the thing in this that I found fascinating is one of the things that went wrong, many things, obviously the competition that Seb mentions, but one of the things that went wrong for them is they replaced their clothing and homeware range in the UK with the products that the parent company sold in Europe, and that proved very unpopular. So there's a lesson there, I guess.
Which is?
Stick to what you're good at.
Stick to what you're good at. And
which is selling things for £1.
keep selling things that you know your customers want to buy, maybe.
Yeah. Sebastian and Rachel, thank you very much for the moment. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.